Hello, everyone from Chelsea Fan TV. Welcome back to the channel. 3 Points Perspective is back. Slightly different type of episodes because I think we're all a little bit out of it. I mean, Nina's in Bulgaria, Charlie's down south in Somerset, and I'm here near Reading. So we're all in different parts, not just of England, but the world. And still coming out, bringing an episode to you. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like just having time off of football and Chelsea. I mean, I know the Euros was on, but I think it was good for everyone just to sort of release because we finished on such a high and then we sacked Poch. I don't know about you. We can talk about it. I was pissed off. So I felt like it was a sour, bitter end to what was a good finish, even though we underachieved. And here we are again with Enzo Maresca. We haven't even played a game. There's already drama at Chelsea with Enzo Fernandez, Fofana as well, and plenty of transfer news as well. So there's lots to talk about, guys. I mean, how's holiday going, Nina? You're in Bulgaria. How's it treating you?
Yeah, really good. The sun's gone to England though, so not too happy about that. But yeah, it's been really nice, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been to Bulgaria, but sounds good. And honestly, I think I
Right.
need to get away at some point. I think, if I'm not wrong, they probably have a Bulgarian team in the Conference League. It sounds like they're
Yeah, there's
pretty.
one by the seaside, well, one by the sea anyway. Yeah,
What's it called?
it's in Varna, but it's a good question what the team's
Mate, they'll
called.
be like Ludogorets or like
No, not it's not.
Year or something.
It's not Ludogorets. No.
No,
No?
okay. Well, anyway, Sunny Beach away next season. We'll be there.
I love it. I love it. I mean, I'm looking forward to some of these obscure away days in the conference. Me and Charlie were talking about it the other day, and we were just saying, like, that's on your bucket list. Just go into one of these
Mate, we'll
away
be
days.
there. No,
Good away days. Yeah.
Mate, we'll have a little road trip for a Moldovan farm. Sit with about 3 people in the away end and watch us lose. What was not to like?
Hey, happy days. Happy days. But yeah, I mean, how's things with you, Charlie, mate?
Yeah, good, mate. Sort of feels like now that pre-season's starting, you're seeing the players training and stuff, and the games are starting to begin. This sort of now feels like the proper start of the season, and you can start getting a bit excited about it again. And obviously, I love transfers probably a bit more than most people do, but yeah, it's nice to have the football back now, and we can start to see what we've been working on, see if there's any early signs of improvements and early signs of if the players have taken stuff on board and how we might be different compared to last season.
Yeah, I mean, but let's just get straight into it, guys. I mean, the first thing for me is the treatment of Trevoh Chalobah at Chelsea. I don't even think it's just this season. It's throughout his tenure at Chelsea, he has been treated so poorly. Obviously, he was given his role in the starting lineup by Thomas Tuchel. Lived up to that role, was a fantastic defender alongside Rudiger and Thiago Silva when called upon. And, he lost a bit of game time at one point, and he was patient. He was patient. He was never in favour under Graham Potter. Lampard came in. The form didn't pick up even still. And then Pochettino didn't want to pick him. And once we started having injuries, Disassi underperformed. Fofana was never available. Reece James, we know he can play sort of in a centre-back role or back three. He wasn't available. So many things sort of fell out of place. But Trevoh Chalobah never let us down. And even with the great run of form that we had, not only am I very disappointed that we're not going to be taking him on the tour in America, he's been left behind, but also on top of that, you look at the valuation we're asking for, anywhere between 30 and 35 million. For a guy who's got multiple years left on his contract, I mean, I just don't get it. And I don't understand how football people can be making this decision. And I mean, I'll start with you, Nina. Do you think that this is a decision taken from the board on a football level, or is this purely financial?
Financial all the way. I mean, I think it's kind of been like a like a timer ticking, hasn't it, with all the arrivals we've had in our defence over like the last couple of years. I think it's kind of slowly been leaning towards the fact that Trevoh Chalobah would go at some point. I mean, you mentioned obviously, Alex, he wasn't very lucky in terms of being a favourite under Poch either. I think it was obviously a mix with him. He had his like kind of extended period of being injured. I think that didn't help really either. But it's a shame, really. I think Trevoh Chalobah is kind of what you can say is really like kind of the old Chelsea still left. You know, there's not many of those players, and they seem to be leaving more and more by the day. But obviously he had his kind of big break. I think Thomas Tuchel probably believed in him most, and I think he had his like most successful period during that time as well. Like if you remember, we had a period of time where we were so solid at the back when Trev played. There was, I keep bringing this up, but you know, however many games he started, he had a streak where we hadn't lost or conceded a game or something of that sort. And he's always turned up, never one to sulk, never one to demand game time or, you know, kind of overshadow his teammates or anything. He kind of just always got on with his job really, really well. A very good professional, and he's not that old. I mean, he's not the youngest, but still people forget that he's very mature for the player he is, the age that he is, and just has been mistreated, full stop. It's a shame that his end to Chelsea is coming in the way it is, but I think we slowly anticipate it would, especially when we signed Tosin. Now I think that was pretty much the last straw there, that Chalobah would not have a place at Chelsea next season. But I personally, I'm gutted. Yeah. What
about you, Charlie, mate?
Yeah, I just think it's like massively disappointing. You know, it doesn't look good to treat someone like one of your own from the academy in that way. It's not good to treat anyone that way, but particularly someone that's, you know, dedicated their whole life to the club, has never moaned about anything, has barely put a foot wrong when he's played on the pitch. You gave him a long-term contract less than 2 years ago, and now he's just discarded to the side like he's nothing. That's not a good look. Whatever people want to think of Chalobah, whatever people want to think of the situation, that's not a good look for the football club. You know, what sort of message does that say to any potential youngsters that might be wanting to come to the club, to any players in the academy that want to come through the club? You know, you work hard, you do your best, you don't put a foot wrong, you sign a long-term contract, but you can just be thrown to the side like that, like you're nothing, with no explanation. I just think like the writing's been on the wall for Trev, I think, for a while. You go back to signing Disassi last year. If the club truly believed in Trevoh Chalobah, you wouldn't be signing Disassi. So that, I think, was the first sign that, you know, it was like his time was up. The next sign, obviously, as Nina mentioned, Tosin coming in this summer. Now you could say, oh, you know, he's maybe replaced Thiago Silva's position in the squad in terms of numbers. But that's another player that Chalobah probably going to end up being behind. But it's a strange one, like, because Pochettino had ample chances to get rid of him last season. Chelsea wanted to sell him for ages. They tried to sell him last summer, but he was injured for the whole first half of the season. So obviously a move didn't materialise. He worked his way into the team. He was arguably Chelsea's best performer, certainly at centre-back, over the second half of last season. A big part of the reason why we managed to finish in the top six. And he kind of just finds himself surplus to requirements. What I don't quite get is why did they let him train with the first team squad for 2 weeks at Cobham and then bin him off? If he was never going to be part of the pre-season tour, send him to train with the group that are going on loan or whatever. Don't let him train with the first team and that, and then decide, oh, actually, you're not going on the tour. And then don't put out that it was a difficult decision. You know, it was really hard for us. It wasn't. You want to get rid of him. You don't obviously see him as part of the plans. That's fine. By the way, I haven't got an issue with players not being seen as part of the plans, but there's a way to treat personnel, and doing that is not it. If he had 1 year left on his contract, maybe I could understand it a little bit more. I still wouldn't think it was a great thing to do, but you can understand it more if someone's got a year left on their deal. But ultimately, I think it just leaves a bad taste in the mouth for someone that's dedicated their whole life to the football club. And Chelsea could be in an awkward situation now where actually Chalobah, with 4 years left on his contract, has got no obligation to move anywhere, doesn't have to accept any move. And The Athletic have reported that like he's not hasn't got a transfer lined up as of yet, and he's not really doing anything to encourage any potential suitors. So, yeah, we could be in an awkward situation where we return from pre-season and he could still be at the club. What happens then? Do we do a Malang Sarr on him and completely freeze him out of all first team activities? What happens when you're trying to sell a player and they're playing no football and you know that, you know, their price is dropping? What do you do then? You know, clubs know we're desperate to get rid of him now. So they're not going to offer the asking price, are they? So, you know, you open yourself up to a load of difficult situations.
Yeah, but, you know, it's interesting you talk about Malang Sarr. Malang Sarr was never good enough for Chelsea. And that's where it's totally different with Chalobah, because Chalobah is arguably one of our best defenders. Now, I'm not going to say he's Reece James at his best, and I'm not going to say he was anything like Thiago Silva at his best, but he almost reminds you of Conor Gallagher in the sense that he was always a 7 out of 10. He was always solid. Everyone has bad games, but I could count on Trevoh Chalobah majority of the time. And that's not how I feel about Badiashile and Disassi and some of these other players. And obviously, we're going to get to know Tosin as well, who I think will actually perform very well for us. But yeah, that being said, when we brought in Disassi, Chalobah was not high in stock. It was only when everyone else was injured or unavailable that he had the chance to come in and prove himself. You know, he did have a slightly bad run of form, but didn't the whole team? So you can't criticize one man for everyone's failure. And yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. Especially
why would you give someone a long-term contract less than 2 years ago and then suddenly come to the conclusion that they're not part of the plans anymore?
Well, it's obvious. It's financial, isn't it? They want to know that if they can't sell him this year, they've got another contract, so they'll be able to sell him the next year.
Yeah, but to get the money for him, he's going to get the money for him. He's going to have to be playing. You're not going to get any money for someone that's not playing.
Well, I think they're counting on the fact that he's going to be going this summer. And I mean, if I was in business for any of the other clubs, 35 million, even at the higher end of what we're asking, is a bargain in the modern day to get a class defender for that. I think Man United, I don't know how much they spent on their recent signing from, I think from France. Is it Lille? Lille, yeah. How much did they spend on him? 50, 60 million or something?
Yeah, I think all in once like the bonuses get added on and stuff if they do. But yeah, look, Chalobah at 35 million, if he ends up being that, is a bargain for someone for sure. But yeah, people just need to, like, there's a lot of people sort of saying that, oh, it's only because he's from the academy. Of course, like, because he's from the academy, there's going to be a bit more meaning behind it. But even if Chalobah was French or he was Brazilian or whatever nationality he was, and he'd been putting in this level of performances that he has been putting in, the treatment's unacceptable. You know, and this is not the first time that we've treated players badly at this football club. And that sort of reputation gets around, and that could have a detrimental effect for the football club. You're running a risk of getting that reputation where actually, you don't want to go there because you could do really well. You can sign a long-term contract, then you can just be kicked to the side like a piece of shit, like less than 2 years later. Like, you don't want that reputation as a football club.
It's a pattern though as well now, isn't it? Like, you see it more and more in recent times, particularly under new ownership, where there's just this big ambiguity with a lot of players' futures at the club, isn't there? Like, we wonder for so long. I mean, obviously Mason Mount was a different story, but, you have the same situation with Conor Gallagher. Would there be a contract as he go? And then there was the whole thing with Trev as well. And it's just becoming this thing where players have this uncertainty around their future at Chelsea. And, you mentioned earlier, Charlie, about what message does that send out really to other players, particularly our newer rivals. It doesn't really add much hope for you as a player. It's almost like, what is the value there for you as a player? Of course, all these players are being sold this project, as our recent signings have been under the new ownership in the last couple of years. But really, when do you kind of stop believing all of that? When players are being kind of forced out, when players are having these big question marks, and we're talking about players that have grown up, bleeding blue. What about for the ones that are yet to arrive? How much will they start believing in a project? And if things go south, and God forbid things do with Enzo Maresca, then we're at some point down the line going to risk the players turning on this project as well. Because for all we know, they're believing in it now, but till when is the question.
I don't know how this would have gone down internally, like amongst the squad, because by all accounts, Chalobah is a popular member of the squad. He's well liked, and I wonder, how many players, like privately, will be sort of scratching their heads at why this has happened and kind of why he's been treated in that way. And you, as you say, you almost get the feeling that it feels like maybe bar one or two, no one feels safe at Chelsea. Like any moment you could just wake up and suddenly so-and-so could be surplus to requirements or so-and-so could be moved on. There should be untouchables at football clubs. There's a reason why no one bids for Kevin De Bruyne, why no one bids for Vinicius Juniors and whatnot, because those guys are considered untouchable. It feels like at Chelsea that if people came in for a player and they felt the conditions of the deal were right, Chelsea would be happy to let anyone go. And that's a little bit of a worry for me. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but you get that feeling from the way that things have been happening that no one's safe.
Well, if it's purely financial, then I agree with what you're saying. But I mean, nobody should be safe. If you don't perform, then you don't have to stay at this club, and you shouldn't be given the chance to.
But it's not a question of not performing, though, is it? Because he has.
Yeah,
performed.
That's what I mean. So financially, I agree with you. But if it's based on performance, then I think it's totally different. The problem is, I don't know if the owners actually think about performance. I mean, is that something that's even relevant to them? I presume in that case, it should be relatively, because if you perform, your value goes up anyway. So there is obviously a correlation. But, I mean, who knows, guys? I mean, let us know in the comments. What do you think about Chalobah? I think it's a disgrace, and I think we can all agree with it as well. And it's just quite sad, to be quite frank. But, we want to have optimism going into the season. We also want clarity. Who is Chelsea's goalkeeper? We didn't know this last season until the latter end, when it was clear that Petrovic was our number one. I don't think we were ever really convinced with Sanchez. I remember speaking with Nina on the way back from West Ham away, and you just weren't convinced. But then the tables completely turned, and it seemed like Petrovic was tossed to the side because of the distribution. And now it seems like Maresca, he's still not happy. He's probably seen some of the mistakes that Sanchez can make in training. And he's looking at Jorgensen. I'm not actually sure who he plays for, Charlie.
Villarreal.
Villarreal. And we've put a £20 million bid in, according to Fabrizio Romano. So, I mean, first of all, what do you think about Sanchez and Petrovic? And do you know anything about this new keeper?
On the new keeper, firstly, don't know an awful lot about him. I barely see him play any football. He's 22. He obviously must be good with like distribution wise, because that's like a key attribute that Chelsea are looking for in a new keeper. So he obviously ticks the boxes of what the club are looking for. But other than that, I can't really add much more information on him, because I don't really know very much about him at all. I think ultimately what we need to hope for is that if he does come in, then we've got to really hope that it works, because this guy will be the third keeper to arrive at the football club in two seasons. We need a consistent goalkeeper if we want to progress as a team. And as I said, I can't really speak on his ability because I've not watched enough of him. So we just got to kind of hope that the data is right on this one. But I just feel, again, it goes back to the strategy at the football club. You signed two goalkeepers last summer. You spent over £40 million on a pair of them. And you've come to the conclusion less than a year later that neither of them are what you're looking for. How can we be operating as a club like that? How can you sign two goalkeepers and a year later decide neither of them are what you're looking for? And this is where the problem lies with the poor manager identification, because Petrovic was clearly signed with Pochettino in mind. The club, despite what they said when they appointed Pochettino, has subsequently transpired they clearly never really believed in him. He was never their guy. And now we're in a situation as well with Sanchez, where we basically entrusted Ben Roberts, the Brighton goalkeeper. He somehow got in a position where he had a massive say in this deal. Maybe we signed him as well as part of a bit of a sweetener for the Caicedo situation. And Sanchez clearly isn't good enough either. Yes, he obviously, probably suits Maresca's style of football a little bit better than what Petrovic does. But ultimately, everyone knows deep down. And look, Sanchez could have some amazing remontada and prove everyone wrong. But I think deep down, everyone knows that Sanchez is not the guy for Chelsea long term. Now, I'm more than happy for him to be proven wrong on that one. And I'll hold my hands up if that is proven to be the case. But I think it's clear that if there was a market for Robert Sanchez, Chelsea wouldn't think twice about selling him this summer. The problem is there's not a market for him. You take a massive loss on him if he was to go at all. And unfortunately, Petrovic has almost become the fall guy in all this because he performed well last season. There is a market for him and he is more of a sellable asset than Sanchez is. So therefore, unfortunately, he's going to be the one that ends up being sacrificed, whether that's on a loan deal or whether that's on a permanent deal. It remains to be seen. But with Jorgensen looking like he's going to arrive, one of those goalkeepers has to leave. And it doesn't look like it's going to be Sanchez. So Petrovic, unfortunately, is going to be a victim of Sanchez having no market, and he's going to be a victim of him of doing well last season. So I just think it's a bit of a mess, and it highlights sort of the inconsistencies in the transfer policy, and it also highlights how the managerial appointments have really hamstrung us in terms of some of our transfer business, and we're now paying the price. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of the players that we signed this summer, in a year's time, we're looking to move some of those on as well.
Yeah. And that's a big indication that it's not about performance, really, is it? It's about the financial side of it, because personally, it shocked me to even see that we're considering selling Petrovic and keeping Sanchez. I mean, Alex, you mentioned earlier, I've not been convinced, and I was sceptical about Sanchez from day one, before he even started making all the mistakes with his feet that he did later down the line. I just was not convinced. And to be honest, he just automatically was keeper number one because he arrived as Kepa's number two, and then Petrovic came shortly after. So it just miraculously happened that he was the one who kick-started the season. And I mean, you know, they always say there's something good and everything bad. When he got injured, it did mean that Petrovic could come in and play earlier as opposed to during our FA Cup campaign at the start of the year. So it worked out kind of well for him. But, you know, we started conceding so many more goals, and, you know, the number just kept rising towards the end of last season. Yet I still had more praise for Petrovic at times than our outfield players. You know, that says a lot. He saved us in a lot of the games. He saved us from conceding more. And it's bizarre because he obviously was goalkeeping against Arsenal and, you know, other teams that scored many against us. But, you know, he's much better with his feet. Yeah, okay, maybe Maresca sees Sanchez as perhaps a better fit for his system. But even so, the positive attributes don't really outweigh keeping him over someone like Petrovic. As concerning Jorgensen, can't really tell you much about him. Could open YouTube and probably see some highlights. But will that tell me exactly what he'd offer us in the Premier League? Probably not. And again, it's like you're going for somebody that's young, unproven. And I get the market for goalkeepers, similar to the strikers, there are not many world-class out there available for us to buy. But I don't really want to start another season with a new goalkeeper that we've not heard, not seen. It's almost like we need our keeper to at least be one source of continuity. There's been a lot of outfield players that have now had their game time. You know, they're going to take and hopefully build on what they showcase our season. But when you start with a new keeper, I don't know, it just almost seems like it's, again, starting from square one. And yeah, like Charlie mentioned, it is all about the financial side of it, isn't it? I mean, wasn't Petrovic meant to be this young and uprising star with all these good stats in the MLS? Came to Chelsea and now, yeah, well, what, we can sell him so someone else can see the peak Petrovic rise. But again, he was good. He proved himself and he performed when Sanchez was injured. Again, like I said, it's not often you praise a keeper when he concedes more than 3 goals a game, but when he keeps at least another 3-4 out because your defenders are letting you down, you know, you still got to pick up some flowers. But yeah, I'm not convinced. I mean, I would have loved to buy a goalkeeper, but a proven one at least. I'm not convinced with this Jorgensen guy. And again, I could be wrong because I've not watched him, seen him, but doesn't that tell you more than you need to know that you don't know much about him?
I think as well, I mean, we haven't even touched on Kepa. I mean, we're just flooded at the moment. You know, if you go on the website, you can see that we've got 6 available goalkeepers that we could play with. Kepa,
when does Bettinelli get game time?
Maybe in a Carabao Cup game or something like that. Sanchez, Bergstrom, I've never seen him play. Petrovic and Slonina as well. Another player that we signed from the MLS.
Not out on loan again this year.
I think he will be going out on loan, but I'm just talking about the amount of firepower we've got in that position, and we're still not able to find a number one. It's all great having all these players out on loan, but we can't settle on a goalkeeper ourselves.
I mean, it just seems to be a horrendous allocation of resources, you know, because it's not about whether Jorgensen's like good or not. As I mentioned, it's about the fact we spent over £40 million on 2 goalkeepers who were deemed good enough 12 months ago, but now aren't deemed good enough. Like, how many more players are there going to be that we end up signing that we're suddenly going to decide a year or two later, oh, actually, they're not good enough, or they weren't what we thought they were looking for. You know, we've got a problem in terms of the fact that, you know, we've got a heavily bloated squad right now. We've used up 3 international loan spots so far. We've got 4 left, and there's probably 5, 6, maybe 7 players who still need them. And there seems to be, at least in my opinion, I mean, people can let me know if they see otherwise, but I just think there seems to be no plan for any developmental pathways. And we're just stockpiling players, in my opinion, at the moment. But they're not going to develop, and there'll be no return on investment. So we really need to carefully consider what we're doing here, because it's all very well, it's all exciting signing these young players. We're going to get, they've got loads of resale value and stuff. If there's no pathway and they're playing no minutes, they're not going to develop, and there's going to be no resale value, and the whole thing's flawed. So we need to think carefully about what we're doing here, because if we carry on the way we're going, we are gonna encompass problems down the line.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much on the fence when it comes to the goalkeepers. I'm not really convinced with anyone. Petrovic, I love, but just because of the system, that is a flaw for me, and I just don't see him fitting in with Maresca. And that's not his fault. He didn't know Maresca was going to be the gaffer. So it is unfortunate.
He's good enough to be a number 2, though. He's definitely good enough to be a number 2.
Yeah, he is good enough to be a number 2, and I'd love him to be the number 2. But it's like you said, there isn't a market for Sanchez because he's not a very reliable keeper. He's going to be overpriced, and the wages are high and compared to what he's really worth. So, I mean, in that sense, I'm looking at it, and I don't see us being able to move on Sanchez. I don't think it's another Lukaku situation. We can get rid of him at some point, but he's more likely to be a number 2 in this scenario than Petrovic, purely because we could still make profit. You know, I think we paid 20 odd million for Petrovic.
No, yeah, 14 million.
Yeah, so 14 million. So, I mean, we'll definitely be able to double that.
Yeah, that's a profit just off last season. Definitely, you'd get more than 14 for him now.
100%. And it's deserved, and it's good business, but it's still disappointing because he's not the keeper that we want to leave. And then you've got Kepa as well. I mean, if you can't move Kepa on, then you're going to have to keep him. He's on astronomically high wages. He doesn't want to be at the club. He doesn't care about the club. And he's clearly waiting for Real Madrid to move on Lunin so he can be the number 2 there. So he knows he's not good enough for us. He's certainly not good enough for them. But, I mean, at least he wants to be at Madrid. You've got to get rid of Kepa as well. So I think we just need someone to come in and we need to take a risk on a keeper. And if it's Jorgensen, then I don't have a problem with that. Enzo Maresca seems to be the one that is leading the pursuit of this player, from what I've heard, and the board are following suit. So it's nice to hear that we are listening to the manager. But again, it's just up in the air. I don't think I'm convinced with any of the goalkeepers we have right now for the current system.
I would agree. I think, like, just lastly on that, if we're being brutally honest, neither Sanchez or Petrovic should be starting in a Maresca-based system. That they just simply shouldn't. They're not good enough in the key attributes that are required. That's the harsh reality of the situation here. But Petrovic is good enough to be part of the squad, and it's more than good enough to be a number 2. And I think, you know, to play cup games, to play the odd league match here or there, I think he's got it in him to adapt enough where he wouldn't be a hindrance to the team when he does play.
I mean, just on the goalkeeping situation, Robert Sanchez came out and what he said is, I know what I can bring to the team. I'm positive. It's a totally different style. The goalkeeper here needs to have a pair and show a bit of personality. I think I am the right guy for that. Right now, I'm feeling confident in training. It's looking good. It's just about being a bit different to what a normal goalkeeper is like. And you need to have a bit of arrogance, hold the ball, show a bit, and like I said, have a pair and show a bit of quality. The problem isn't the confidence. I think he's very confident, but he's too confident, and especially holding the ball. That's the problem. You don't get rid of the ball. But
You
yeah,
hold your breath every time he's got the ball at his feet. I do it anyway.
there's confidence, and then there's just stupidity.
No, but there's such a nervous, or certainly last season, there was such a nervousness when he was on the ball at the back, and you just get the feeling like there's nervousness in the crowd, and there was a nervousness, you could sense it amongst the defenders. They didn't trust him on the ball. They didn't trust his decision making. The amount of times that he played it short in a dangerous area, put players in a difficult situation. The amount of times just put it straight out. Like, of course, players can improve. I don't want to write someone off after just one season where he's not played like that much, but the signs haven't looked good. So unless he's had a miraculous transformation over the summer, that I'm yet to have any confidence from what he's shown us that he can be that guy. And I think it's clear that by signing a third goalkeeper in less than 2 years, that the club don't share that confidence in him either.
No, you're not wrong, mate. And also, it's come out from Ravello. I've never heard of them, but Pies has retweeted that Chelsea will be accepting any offers 15 million or higher for Kepa. So considering we paid 71 million, it's quite a hefty loss.
Yeah, he's got a year left in this deal, hasn't he?
I mean, it's fair enough, isn't it? You got to get his wages off the books, but you still grit your teeth regardless. I suppose one of the positives from this ownership that they can look at is they're not the ones who paid. So in their eyes, it's just another bit of dead wood.
I wonder if we're still paying for him.
What do you mean still paying? Oh, with the installments?
Yeah, I wonder if we are.
That's a good question,
We signed him what, 2018 on a 6-year deal?
It's a 7-year deal.
7-year deal. Well, there we go.
Yeah.
We could there's a chance we could still be paying. I mean, I don't know for certain, but I wonder if we are.
Yeah, I mean, the last ownership, I don't think they were as structured in terms of the payments. I think Roman was happy to just throw a bit more cash at it. But, I mean, who knows? If we can get rid of Kepa, I'll be a very happy man.
Yeah, I mean, the wages are more important than any transfer fee. I'm not really asked about what fee we get for Kepa. Just get those wages off the books because they are large.
I mean, I know there was interest from Saudi, or so apparently there was. I mean, it was the same as KDB with Al Ittihad, but apparently that was rubbish. I don't know if that's the same with Kepa, but I mean, these guys have a lot of cash and they're not willing to spend £15 million. Wages, they could easily match that. So they just don't rate Kepa as far as I'm concerned. And then Madrid's the only other option if they need a number 2, but why would you pay 15 million for a number 2?
They're not going to pay 15 million unless they mean euros, which would be more like maybe 11 or 12, which is probably at the upper end of what you'd get for Kepa, given his form's not great, given he's got a year left on his contract. If someone were to offer us 11 or 12 million, I'd just take it straight away. But it's clear that he's waiting for Lunin to decide what he's going to do, because Lunin's got a year left on his deal at Madrid. If he signs an extension, then Kepa's obviously dreams of going to Madrid are gone. So it's basically just waiting for Lunin's decision on whether he wants to sign an extension or leave. And then I think from there, we'll then like dominoes will start to fall into place, a little bit like Lukaku. We're just waiting for Osimhen to leave Napoli, and then Lukaku can join them. So look, the outgoings have been a bit slow, but there are like some pieces in the pipework here where we're just waiting for a couple of other pieces to drop in, and then it will set off those deals. So like Osimhen leaving will trigger Lukaku going to Napoli, and then I think if Lunin decides to leave, that maybe triggers off Kepa going. But the outgoings have been a little bit slower than I think a lot of people would have perhaps expected, and a lot of people would have perhaps liked.
I mean, Nino, would you take Lunin at Chelsea? Because I'm surprised that we haven't made a move for this guy. I think he's a really good keeper.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good keeper at club level. Obviously, a bit disappointed at the Euros, but I think that's just, it goes collectively for the whole team. But we didn't see the same Lunin as we did at club level. Does he suit Maresca's style? Maybe a little more so than Sanchez and Petrovic, but I don't know. Maybe not. I mean, wasn't he even a backup to Kepa? Well, Kepa came in as backup to Courtois, and then they preferred Lunin over Kepa, so Kepa came number 3, and then there was a bit of a back and forth situation. So I'm not so sure they were particularly convinced at times either, but I guess it just comes with the rawness sometimes of the player. But I think he was quite underwhelming and disappointing at the Euro, so maybe off the back of that, no.
Fair enough. I mean, they don't want to take less than 30 million, but 30 million is not bad for a goalkeeper in the modern market. When you look at what Liverpool paid for Alisson and what we paid for Kepa, etc. If that's a long-term number one, goalkeepers can play until they're in their late 30s. Really,
For sure.
it seems like a good investment, but it's not just good players; it's profile of players, whether they can fit the system as well. I'm surprised that we haven't been associated with him more. I mean, we have been linked, but it doesn't seem like we've actually made any leeway. For me, he's a good keeper. I don't think I would judge a player purely on a Euro campaign, but maybe that would put his value down ever so slightly. But yeah, I mean, who knows, guys? Which keeper do you think should be the number one? Let us know in the comments. And we move on to the preview, the first preview of the season. Wrexham, not home, not away. It's in America. So, yeah, I'm not going out there. I don't think anyone else from the channel is. Listen, I mean, Ryan Reynolds FC, I'm looking forward to it. A 3 a.m. kickoff. It's not really an indication of what we are like as a team, but we will be able to see the style of play that we want to implement. I mean, how do you guys feel coming into this one?
Well, just excited to see us back on the pitch again. Excited to see, how we set up tactically, how certain players' positions have changed. It'll be a good chance to see some of the new signings, your Dewsbury Halls, your Vegas, your Guiyus, etc. It'll be an opportunity to see them in action for the first time. That's always something to look forward to, even though you might not find out an awful lot about them. Be good to see some of the injured guys back, your Reece Jameses, your Fofanas, your Lavias. Hopefully they come through unscathed and whatnot. So yeah, I think it's just, a bit of excitement, and, you can start to, it feels like the preparations for the new season are really kicking in now. So, I mean, look, results wise, yeah, of course you want to win, but pre-season's not really about the results. It's about, getting the tactics in, understanding what the manager requires, and putting in the performances and showing an identity. And if you can get those results along the way with it, great. But for me, I'm more looking at getting fit minutes in the legs, and I'm more looking for an identity and kind of a style and tactically how we're different rather than the result.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's mostly the excitement of seeing us all come together. And I think under a new, I know loads of people aren't really that moved by preseason. They don't really care about it. Not many people follow it. But I think particularly for us Chelsea fans in the last year, I mean, seeing preseason last season, seeing the team shape up and how exciting it was to see all the players kind of come together. It's a similar situation this time around because we've still got more additions. Things are coming together. It's a new coach again. So you kind of are intrigued to see what that looks like on the pitch. But equally to see the players, I mean, I'm excited to see that someone like Christopher Nkunku. I mean, he was part of pre-season last season. He didn't obviously play for the majority of last season. He's going to be back on the pitch, and it's all these players that we kind of miss seeing, that we were invited to believe would be having a big impact on Chelsea. And that's not to say they won't, but it's exciting to see it all come together. And then obviously Enzo Maresca, just to see how he coaches, what his ideas are, see how he's perhaps transformed some of the style of play. And again, that will change massively as we go into the league, but it's always a good little trial and error, isn't it? I think it's kind of exciting when you are under a new regime, you are under new coaches every year to see how that kind of unfolds as a collective. So yeah, I think I'm perhaps in the last sort of couple of years more open to seeing not watching, but again, seeing bits and pieces of pre-season because I think it'll be quite interesting. But yeah, Ryan Reynolds FC, let's have it.
I love it. But yeah, I mean, it's just going to be totally different, isn't it? I mean, personally, I quite like the way we play down the pitch. I know that we didn't always have the ball. I know we weren't necessarily in control in that sense, but I don't always think you need to have the ball to play well. I love Mourinho. I love Simeone. I love these managers. So I don't agree with everyone saying we've got to have possession all the time. But modern football is moving that way. And listen, you can still see some very attractive football. I liked Maurizio Sarri. I thought he should have been given more time. For me, he was the most similar type of manager that what we've had in the past to compare to what we have with Maresca now. It's going to be very much my way or the highway. And if players don't fit into that style, they're not going to play, or we're going to keep losing matches. And I think Enzo wants to keep his job. So I think we're going to see a very stringent style, passing out from the back. That's a given. That's always been a given anyway. And just that Guardiola-esque style, which, I mean, I saw a couple of the clips on Twitter. You can already see it just with the way we train, and it's easy to understand what we want to do. And I give Maresca credit for that, because I think that was often a question people asked of Poch, who was very hands-off in a lot of ways. But Maresca is a very different type of coach. I think we highlight that word and we say, listen, this guy isn't just a manager who's looking to, settle players in, allow people to shine individually. If you don't fit into the system, then you won't shine as an individual. So it'd be interesting to see how that affects some players. I mean, if I look at Guardiola as an example, some players don't fit into that. Grealish is a great example. And I think if I was to compare one of our players, I'd look at Madueke, a player who does very well individually, but I think at times his link-up could be better. I'd love to see how he fits into the squad. And Mudryk as well, who people have consistently criticised, and also criticised Poch because of the lack of a system. How is he going to fit into this structure? I'd love to see him playing more in that sense. But one thing Maresca's got now, and I just hope we keep it throughout the season, is a fit squad. And I remember when we watched pre-season under Poch, before Nkunku got injured, when we still had Chukwuemeka, we look great. And I think that if we can keep a squad fit and rotate throughout, especially with European football, we're going to be a real firing power. And I think top four is an absolute requirement, especially with the money we've spent and the fact that the players we brought in previously are settled. There's no excuse. I mean, how do you guys feel?
Yeah, I think we can't go a third season without Champions League football. It's as simple as that at the end of the day. I don't care if it's a rookie manager or whatever it might be. We have to get back in the Champions League, because that's what these players would have been pitched when the project was being presented to them. And the longer we stay out of the Champions League, then the higher the chances that doubts might start to grow amongst those players that actually this is not what we signed up for. And you don't want to run the risk of those doubts occurring and players wanting out because the project's not what they were told it was going to be. So it's vital that we get top four next season. Of course, from a fan perspective, you take the trophies over the top four. Of course you do. No one remembers. I remember that day out at so-and-so and we got top four. No one remembers that, but they remember when we won the FA Cup, we won the whatever it might be. So from a fan perspective, you absolutely want the trophies over a top four finish. But from a football club perspective, from a business perspective, just like in terms of the long term, the top four is an essential next season. And it's there for the taking, because Man United aren't that great. It's neither are Tottenham, neither are Newcastle. Aston Villa are showing ambition in the market, making some good signings. You don't know how they're going to cope with Champions League football. Liverpool under Arne Slot are going to be a bit of an unknown. They're yet to make any signings. You're not really sure what you're going to get from them. We know that City and Arsenal are comfortably the two best teams in the league, but that top four is up for grabs, And as you said, Alex, the most important thing is, can we keep the majority of the squad fit for the majority of the season? If we can, there's no reason in my mind why we can't reach the top four. We were good enough to get top four last season. We just lacked consistency. That was the biggest issue. We were good enough with all those injuries. Yeah. We were good enough for top four. So if we can hit the ground running, if we can, keep the majority of the players fit, then we should be finishing in the top four. We're capable of doing it, but the big question is, have we got the consistency to do it? It's not about can we do it, because we absolutely can. But the big question mark, as always, is, can we keep the players fit, and are we going to have solved our issues in terms of consistency? And we're going to have to wait and find out for those answers. But yeah, top four is a necessity next season. We absolutely have to.
Yeah, I echo what you've both said. And I think being fit is often overlooked. I think it's a big part of last season. I know loads of top clubs had injuries, but with us being a new team under a new coach, it meant that things were consistently changing way too much, and Poch just couldn't, figure out any consistency within the team. So I think fitness is going to be a big factor, because if you can keep those players fit, it's much easier to implement a system and then build on things. And, agreeing with what you said, Alex, about having a system that is consistent, my way or the highway, I think it's really important, because what Poch did, in my opinion, last season was he managed the players well individually. We saw that he had a good relationship with them. He was able to manage their emotions. He was able to support those who needed support. And he was very good on a personal level, right? That's why a lot of them really liked him. And being a young player and having that kind of fatherly figure settle you into the squad is important. But I think what the players now need more than ever is to be coached. And I think that's where Pochettino fell short at times. So it was great that he managed those relationships, but I think these players now need to step into next season working under Maresca in this clear, identifiable style of play, to know exactly what their role is with that system. And as opposed to being able to express themselves individually and kind of relying on that moment of magic or individual brilliance to take us out of a game, I think now what we need to see is that collective style of play. Because last season we spoke about, your Madueke is doing your good things, and I agree with you, Alex. I think he was very good at times of just making things happen on his own, taking on his man, taking a shot, leading to a goal. But those things weren't always consistent. And I think now playing under the system, being in this clear system where everyone knows their role, is going to be crucial to making that extra step of looking like a good team and competing consistently. So I think it's not bad, the foundation that Poch left of the players getting to know each other on a personal level. I think that's really important. I'm a key believer in relationships and building those in order for things to work, professionally as well. Like with any job and anything you will do in life, right? It's important. So it's a good foundation we have now. I think those players just need to be coached, and we're already seeing it. Preseason will be a massive indication of where we are ahead of Manchester City first game of next season, Pep versus Maresca. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting building block as well. Is it just me, or are they trying really hard to make it look like they are twins? Like some of the designs and graphics I've seen, Enzo looks like Pep so much in some of them, like with the shaved head and everything. I'm like, they're totally building this narrative, the twins head to head.
I mean, they're building a rivalry that I don't think really exists. But I mean, can I just? There is a lot of bold managers this season.
Oh
like,
yeah,
sure. Hair. I don't know what's going on. I mean, it's a stressful job, but I mean, you've got Arne Slot, you've got Maresca, you've got Guardiola, Ten
Hag, yeah, true.
Oh god, yeah. I'd be interested to see how. I think United will do well this season, and that's more reason why we need to do well, because I actually think in terms of competition for top four, we actually had a real chance last season, because Tottenham slipped up, Newcastle slipped up, United weren't great, and I think this year what you'll see is other clubs sort of pushing that boundary. I think Liverpool will struggle. I think it's just inevitable after such a great campaign over 7-8 years with Klopp. I think it's just a difficult job, not necessarily like walking in after Fergie, but similar sort of thing. And yeah, I mean, we've got to be up there, and I think United will be doing well. I think that they did the right thing keeping Ten Hag. I don't know about you guys, but I always said if we did sack Poch, I would have taken Ten Hag at Chelsea. I think he's a class manager. But not everybody agrees with that sort of brutal style of management. It's kind of the polar opposite with Pochettino, isn't it? But I think we can be settled with what we have with Maresca, especially when I looked at the other options that we had with Thomas Frank and De Zerbi. I would have picked Maresca over them. So I'm not inspired, but I am quietly optimistic. And time is the greatest healer, isn't it? So my anger from a month or two ago when we sacked Poch has turned into sort of a stable optimism. But yeah, I mean, what else can you do? You've got to just wait and see what happens when we kick a ball. We're not going to lose to Wrexham, are we? So after pre-season, providing we can get through that, then I think we can start to judge. But yeah, top four is an absolute minimum. I mean, just one other thing, guys. I mean, we've got another 5-10 minutes. What players do you think that we need to bring in? Obviously, we've spoken about the goalkeeping position. Do you think that a striker should still be a priority?
If the right option's out there, then yeah. But I don't want us just to sign someone for the sake of it. It needs to be a good fit for the club. It needs to be the right profile, and it needs to make sense. For me, there's no point just bringing in another project striker. If you're going to bring a striker in, you need to bring someone in that's going to make a difference. We've already got, Gihu, is like another project striker. Jackson, whilst he's got a season under his belt, is essentially still a project striker. For me, if you're going to bring someone in, you look to bring in someone a bit more established and someone that is kind of ready to make an impact straight away, rather than someone that, is going to take a few years. Personally, for me, I don't think we need a winger. I know the reports are saying we're in the market for one. I personally don't feel we need another one. So for me, a striker, if we can get it, if it makes sense and it's the right profile and it's going to be of a benefit to the team. Otherwise, I'd rather us just stick with what we've got and work with what we have. And I know, look, Jackson and Kunku, Gihu, etc., might be a bit of a gamble to take going into the season, but I would rather do that than sort of aimlessly spend money on someone who isn't really going to make that much of a difference. So, and you look at the striker market and it's not that great, particularly for sort of what we're looking at. I'd rather stick with what we've got than spend 40 plus million on an Omarodion, for example, So unless any options become available later on in the market, then I'll be honest, mate, get this goalkeeper and whoever it ends up being, and I just stick with what we've got personally.
Yeah, I back Charlie 100%. And I think one thing I said was, obviously when we were in for like Michael Lee saying it was an attractive signing and it was kind of disappointing. I think what I've realised shortly after was that if we had addressed or just bought a striker, an out-and-out number 9, someone that's proven and clinical to get us goals, I think we absolutely could have been all right. Because I think there's nothing worse right now than oversaturating the wingers department even more. I mean, it's still a question mark kind of who will fit where under Maresca, but I think it's safe to say that we've still brought in enough young wingers who are yet to prove themselves, unlock themselves, and they're worth giving a chance to as well, right? But I always would have preferred to just buy an out-and-out number 9, but now that we have brought in Mark Gee, I think it's safe to say that Jackson probably, if we don't go in for anyone else, takes that kind of first pick as a striker, and then perhaps Mark Gee gets game time. There'll be loads of games, there'll be minutes to hand out to loads of players, but I think it still needs to be a priority. I always said if we'd spent some of the money we did elsewhere on a striker last season when there was a bit more choice, then perhaps we would have been in a better position. But I agree with Charlie, there's no point of bringing in another what if question mark. Don't need that. It's not really healthy. Won't do much for the team. And I think, Jackson can build on the foundation he's had last season. I think, he did great. Maybe if you look at conversion, perhaps not so great, but the numbers alone still do look better as a
he's a 20 goal a season striker. If he improved his finishing, he would have got 20 goals last season.
100%. That's what I'm saying. Like, if you look at
because of his conversion, though.
Pardon?
Wasn't that one of the reasons we signed him from Villarreal? Because his conversion was really good.
Yeah, but it was only because of the last half of the season at Villarreal. I mean, he didn't really play much at the start, did he? But even still, he had a decent enough impact. And let's be real, coming from La Liga and balling out and hitting those numbers in your first season in the Premier League is a decent thing, especially when the rest of the team is underperforming. So yeah, he deserves his flowers. I've been skeptical about Jackson, but I've also praised him where he has deserved. So if he can build on that, and again, if he can play and flourish in the system, it'd be much, much better. I mean, I really wanted a left back, but now that we've signed, Vega, I believe he can kind of occupy that left back role as well. He can play centre back, midfield. I think he's quite versatile. Obviously, Chile is a question mark, but Marco Corella, I think, is deservingly going to be our number 1 left back next season. That's no problem with that.
Caleb Wiley as well. From,
there you go.
I think he's going straight to Strasbourg.
He's going out on loan. But even still, I think, again, I always preferred before the window started to address the left-back situation before a centre-back. But, I think we could do now in that department. And if there is a goalkeeper that is worth spending and splashing out for and will fit Maresca style, then that's a great place to stop, personally. What's the point of, splashing more cash on places we don't need? I think, I'm not interested in beating Arsenal or a top club to a player just to have him. I'm interested in Chelsea just addressing the positions that we need, buying the players that we need. Otherwise, I'm sorted. You know, we've really spent the money. We need to actually get the best out of these players, and hopefully that's where Maresca steps in.
I don't know. I think my stance before the window was very much, we don't need to sign a lot, but we need quality. And we haven't taken that approach. So, I mean, I understand where we're at now. And I mean, the side of me that stands outside Stamford Bridge after a game says, what the hell are we doing? You know, this is pathetic. And then the other side is, this could really work. This could be genius. But when you spend all this money and watch your team have some of the performances we had last season, we can't see that again this year. And I think we will, to be quite frank. I think we will, even if we do get top four.
Well, there'll be some shit performances for sure, guaranteed. So you might as well just prepare yourselves and accept that's going to happen. There'll be some terrible performances, but as long as they're few and far between, then, you know, that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, the consistency is what we struggled with last season. And I think having a consistent style of play and a system that everyone understands, not just on the pitch, but off the pitch, I think that will breed a form of consistency in itself with results. Because if it doesn't work one week, at least we know that we just need to get better at that thing rather than constantly tweaking and changing. But yeah, I mean, for me, I would have loved to have a top striker. I also think that we needed a top left back, to be quite honest with you. I don't think Chilwell's been good enough. I don't think that he deserves to be in the squad the way he's played. Although his character in the dressing room is a nice thing to have. He's won the Champions League. He's one of the few players that still has. Apart from Reece James, I think that's about it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think a couple of them. Literally, I think there's two. Those are the only two players in the squad, I think, that have actually won something at Chelsea. That have won something at Chelsea.
I mean, that's mad.
Yeah, I think they're the only two left that have won something at the club.
So, I mean, just to have that little bit of experience, that even if you are a better player than Chilwell, and I believe Cucurella is, you can still look up to the fact that he's achieved things and won things. I think that's, anyone would aspire to have that in their dressing room. So we've got to use it to our advantage. But yeah, for me, he's not good enough. I don't think he suits Maresca's system either. I don't see how he fits in. I don't think he's intricate. I don't think he's necessarily anything special. Defensively on the ball, he can be really good, but we're not going to be using him like we used him under Tuchel when he performed really well. It's actually the right back that inverts, not the left back. So you'll almost be asking him to sit back, which suits Cucurella down to a T. So I think Cucurella will perform really, really well. I'd love to see Gusto in this team as well. And I think Reece James rotating with Gusto, I think that's going to be an absolute nightmare for any team we play against, just because they're so good on the ball. But I mean, we're all just spitting. Well, I'm just saying ideas. Nobody knows anything. Nothing's concrete. I mean, yeah, that's where I'm at. I mean, is there anything you guys wanted to finish off on? Because, yeah, I think we've covered most of the points. What I'll do next time is I'll go on Twitter and I'll get a little Q&A for the end. I think people would like it if they had some questions answered, because there's always going to be something that I can't think of.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we'll round up there. If you haven't already subscribed to Charlie and Nina's channels, the channels will be in the description below. Go and check them out. Subscribe. They're pretty active. Live streams, Chelsea news videos, etc. And if you haven't already subscribed to Chelsea Fan TV, please do. It always helps. And look, this is the first episode of many. Hope you enjoyed, and we're looking forward to being back very, very soon. All the best, and up the Chelsea.